Hello and welcome to the Trading Bell. I'm Nokip Kimboy, and today we are on a cleaning endeavor. Talk about wash. This is commonly or a common term when you're referring to matters money laundering. And also there's another element of terrorism financing, basically illicit flow of money. This is a huge problem, not only, on the continent of Africa, but globally. Close to 2 to 5% of the global GDP is illicitly flowing. And that money could change a lot of things. So the question is, what is being done to counter money laundering and also to combat matters terrorism financing? That's why today on the Trading Bell, we have the man himself, head of the Financial Reporting Center, Director General, Captain Retired Saitoti Maika, who will talk to us on this particular issue. Money laundering, quite a big term. But even before we do that, when you talk about Financial Reporting Center, is one of those organizations that are sort of under the radar, but doing the most important work. Bring us up to date. What does FRC do?
Thank you, Noah. FRC is a state corporation, which is a body corporate established by the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act with the sole mandate of identification of proceeds of crime and combating the financing of terrorism and combating the proliferation financing. So basically, we are the body that is mandated to look at illicit financial flows, identify suspicion, qualify the suspicion, and then disseminate the findings to the relevant law enforcement agencies for further action. In this case, for prosecution purposes. And we do also share with the designated regulatory bodies the findings of our report to address any issues that are probably related to breaches of law that fall within the purview of the respective regulatory authorities.
All right. That's very important because, they say in every market, there's always a madman. And when you talk about financial flows globally, there are those bad elements that play within the system. And your job is to identify them. So when you talk about money laundering, in simple terms, what does that entail?
Money laundering is basically a generic term that refers to conversion of illicit proceeds to licit proceeds through processes. What I mean by this is the process in which illegally acquired proceeds or assets, for that matter, are converted to give them an apparent legal source. So our business is to find out the source of the illegality, address the source, and also address the offense that's prescribed in law.
From a larger scale of things, for example, if somebody is turning their illegally sourced money and they inject it, for example, into the real estate sector and they build houses. Talk to us about the economic impact of that, having illegal money being funneled and channeled and being cleaned and brought into the legal side of things. What are the economic implications of that?
There are quite a number of economic implications. One, looking at the broader picture, is the issue of breaching the law, which anchors literally everything thereafter. And the economic implication, by and large, affects the whole economy, both sectoral and what I'll probably call the national outlook. Because let's look, for example, at the banking sector for that matter, because all of us more or less converge at the bank. Whether you're doing anything else, at the end of the day, there's a banker who has to bank and give safe custody of our incomes. When you have an issue or a situation where illicit proceeds flow into the banks, that in itself distorts a lot of things. One, it gives a false representation of genuine income, which the bankers will receive unknowingly, and that in itself more or less populates or pollutes what the bank already holds as legal income from all of us. And the economic impact of that, it gives a lot of distortion. Because at the end of the day, assuming that a criminal is holding proceeds in Kenya, the moment it becomes unsafe, he'll move the proceeds elsewhere. That itself affects the deposit in the bank. Banks basically trade with our money. So in a situation where there's a rampant or a withdrawal, a huge withdrawal, then that takes away basically what the banks used to trade with. And that itself is distortion. There's a whole impact of also fueling the already existing illegal activity. If it's proceeds from, let's say, drug trafficking, and they're banked, that gives that trafficker a safe haven where he can keep his proceeds and continue safely to engage in that illegal activity.
Quite a number of risks, and that's why when you released the National Risk Assessment on money laundering and terrorism financing, it was very critical to give us an understanding of exactly the progress that we've had. You mentioned earlier on the predicate offences, and quite a number of them. I was just trying to find that particular graph you cited between 2016 and 2019, and the leading one was obtaining these finances obtained under false pretense, as has been going up from 2016 to 2019. Another one, stealing by employee or servant. Somebody has siphoned money, and that is second under predicate offences. Maybe just to zero in on that, for this trend that you're seeing, what is happening? The numbers seem to be going down on employee siphoning, but they're still up there, though dropping a little bit. What measures are being put to tackle like these top two predicate offences?
First, let me put a disclaimer on that, because we don't have a role in regard to dealing with the predicate offences.
Okay.
Ours is to identify money laundering and basically process of crime. But again, that statistics that's drawn from the DCI, and it was to help us understand the risk and context in respect of the national risk assessment. But let me comment about the two which you've mentioned. One is obtaining by
false pretense.
By false pretense. Mm-hmm. And that in itself is fraud in a way. And basically, it revolves around the whole issue of even the wash you're talking about. Somebody proclaiming that I have gold or diamond to sell. At the end of the day, you get into contractual arrangements in which you pay for this gold. It turns out to be wash. There's nothing. It's hot air. Or even by and large, it's fake gold for that matter. This is what basically the whole issue of obtaining by false pretense is involved with. Again, it's just the normal, the whole issue of, we've seen these scams where somebody says, I have this order. This is very common with the purported international NGOs. I have an order to supply this NGO with this kind of goods. You need to deliver these goods. It's quite lucrative. We have the order. If you don't deliver by tomorrow, if you don't deliver by Friday, we are giving someone else that order. Deliver the goods. Monday, you're going for your payment. That office is vacant. So again, these are the kind of offenses that are basically referred to as obtaining by false pretense. Mm-hmm. The second one is theft by servant. Yes. Theft by servant is also a very, very wide offense. It's because basically it's a basic offense of you defrauding your own employer. It ranges from the basic domestic setting where somebody takes away your property and that's it, it becomes an offense, even to the level where an employee of a multinational colludes with other persons, either within or without the institution, and carry out fraud against the institution. And that, again, that's also theft by servant. That's a generic charge which is preferred against someone who commits such an offense. And this is basically one area that we looked at among the other offenses, just to try and understand the risks in the country. And out of the prevalence, and based on the statistics provided by DCI, we arrived at that conviction that this is actually the highest, or among the highest offenses that have been reported that generates proceeds. Because at the end of the day, if it's defrauding by an employee, be it in the private or public sector, those are basically proceeds of crime.
Yes.
And we go after those proceeds. If you steal from your employer, whether in public or private, you convert those proceeds into your own use. That's how money laundering happens. So when we are charging you for the offense of stealing by servant, we also go for the proceeds, which are subject to forfeiture or confiscation for that matter, because those are proceeds of crime.
Okay.
Yes.